everyone. It's a lovely morning, and we are in conversation with Manjula. So, Amrita and I are bringing together a new series on Tappin, where we're going to have interesting conversations, coffee conversations. So, grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and let's have a wonderful chat with Manjula. I would like to, it's an honor to introduce Manjula. Actually, I remember my first meeting with her, and it was one of those warm conversations that make you feel really welcomed. And I think it was a great start to my career in a new organization. Manjula's had a diverse career across multiple organizations over 20 years, multiple awards, and is one of the most creative people I've ever met. So, welcome, Manjula, and thank you so much for having this conversation with us today.
Thank you, Preetha and Amrita, for having me. The two of you are some of the most inspiring women I've ever met. So I think it's the mutual admiration out here.
That's the show, guys. That's the show. We're just going to sit here and say nice things about each other. We'll put a link to Manjula's new website, hyphenated.com. Manjula, as Preetha said, is one of the most creative people we know. She's an award-winning strategic and creative leader with a 20-year career building brands, products, and platforms that have moved the world. Taking this verbatim from her website, so you can go and read a little bit more there. What we love is also that, she has this diverse background. She was born in India, raised in the Middle East, and as she puts it, forged in the US. Manjula says she thrives at the intersection of culture, media, entertainment, and tech. She's a hyphenate, a dot connector, and a creative futurist. So we're going to ask her many, many questions about all of this. Manjula, let's dive straight into this by asking you one thing, which we find fascinating to talk to women across the board about. What is one of the biggest stereotypes or myths, or a couple of them, that you'd like to bust when it comes to women and leadership specifically?
Yeah, no, I think we hear a lot of really common tropes, right? So I think the first one for me was, women are too emotional. But I feel like, leading with kindness and empathy and being a good listener is actually a superpower, especially in a time where the world is changing so fast. Leaders who lead with empathy really stand out because they raise everyone up, especially when times are hard. And now you see that happening everywhere with layoffs and things. And then the second one, I think, was we can't find the women. It's a pipeline problem. It is not a pipeline problem. It's a systemic problem. Women leaders are everywhere. They're not invisible. And these systems really need to be redesigned from the ground up to be diverse, inclusive, and most importantly, equitable. The last one, I think, for me was that women don't have executive presence. And this is sort of the common thing that you hear around everywhere, whether, wherever you work. I think here it's really important for women to take the time to articulate your ambition, your intention. Whether you're at a company, you have to share that vision with your team, your peers, or your executives. Find allies and build partnerships. And if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, dive in and share your voice and find your chosen platforms, find your allies, and go and share your voice because the world needs to hear it.
That's really interesting. And that takes us to the next question, which I think many people will relate with as people are now moving cities, organizations. So you not just worked in one country, you worked across countries, be it the Americas, you worked across Middle East, Europe, Asia. So tell us a little as to how have you kind of adjusted as you kind of transition from one role to another, from one country to another? And what was that one aha moment that you kind of cherish and remember?
For me, I've been very lucky to have had this sort of hyphenated experience, living in a lot of different countries, working in a lot of different cultures. A few things have really carried me from one place to another. And this idea of, we have more things in common than not. And that inspiration is everywhere. You never know whose story is going to inspire you. So always keep your, eyes wide open to absorb it all in. I remember I grew up in Doha when no one knew where it was. It was like this tiny little, tiny little country. And I remember watching Meera Nair's Salam Bombay in this tiny, dingy theater. And it just changed my life. I must have been 7 years old, and it was like this little Indian, film festival that my parents had put up, and we all went to watch it. There was something that she said that really stuck with me. Where she said, "If you don't tell your own stories, then no one will." And so I came to India to design school and started my career as an art director in Bangalore. And this idea that inspiration carries you from one thing to another, you have to always be looking for it. The second is that sort of stories move people, and there's more that unites us than divides us, regardless of where you grow up and work. And I kind of once I came to India, I went back to design school, kind of learned a lot of stuff, started out as an art director, and then moved to the US to go to film school. And this idea of being a beginner and being able to start afresh wherever you are in your career, I think is also another important thing that I've learned to do. I studied cinematography and film and direction, and to start with the beginner's eye was pretty wonderful. And I think once I started making films, there was one film that got selected and did the film festival circuit. We showed in Tribeca. And I remember we were one of 4,000 films that got shown there. There were 4 others that showed with us. One won the Oscar that year, so we were in really great company. But the entire theater was filled with people from all over the world, and they all moved with us, as the directors and producers of the film. And I learned that stories have the power to move people more than anything else. So those were sort of the things that have carried me. I think creativity, courage, being able to try new things and actually learn as you go, all really important things to take away.
I love that. I think also what you said about everyone having a story and knowing that you have a story, knowing that your story is important, especially for women, women of color, women in emerging markets, to know this as they're transitioning. And you've been a sort of constant learner. Like, I love that also about you, Manjula, the curiosity. You're interested in so many things. Let's ask you one question that's sort of zooming out a little bit. What's a top trend you're really excited about in 2023? Injecting a sort of note of positivity as we are heading into spring. What's a top trend that you're excited about?
I think the rise of AI tools is going to be a major technological revolution, and it's going to change industries. It's going to give us a lot more inspiration as we move forward, but it's also going to come with a lot of responsibility. And my sense is that it's going to put a premium on strengths that make us human. So things like curiosity about the world, creativity, your artistic ability, courage, your ability to try new things, empathy, being able to see what the commonalities are between us, collaboration, being able to work across cultures, and then the last 2 things, authenticity and integrity. All of those things are going to set people apart as you deal with AI coming and transforming your life.
That's so true. And I completely buy in that, every new technology that comes, you need to embrace it. You can't kind of shy away from embracing it, but there's a huge amount of responsibility that comes along with it. So I would, seriously urge people to kind of read a lot more, experiment, and at the end of the day, your authentic self has to shine through. There's nothing that can kind of replace that. So coming to a question that's very topical and top of mind for a lot of people when we've been speaking to them, related to the job search. I know it's a tough environment. We've seen layoffs happen. We've also seen people wanting to kind of make the switch as we kind of come out of a post-COVID world.
Yeah.
So I want to know, Manjula, from your end, because you've got experience across organizations and countries, what are the top 2-3 things that you want to share with people when they kind of go through this process? Because it's kind of it's not an easy process, right? You have to be mentally quite strong and prepared to go through this whole marathon. I would not certainly call it a sprint. I doubt anyone gets selected at the first go. You've got to go through the whole grind. So just from your end, what would you tell candidates, 2-3 things that they should kind of prep with and be ready with?
Yeah, I think owning your purpose and owning your joy. So be really clear on why you're doing a particular thing. Why are you pursuing a particular opportunity or pathway? How does that align with who you are and what your purpose in the world is? And so do the inner work of knowing what your intrinsic motivators are. We can all get very distracted by titles and money and all of the stuff. Like, all of that is, definitely a part of it. But I think, looking back on your career and thinking about the times that gave you energy and joy, figure out how to do more of that. The other thing I think is owning your story, taking the time to find and hone your creative voice. So amplify your strengths by focusing on what makes you unique. and design your own story arc, empower your visualization to imagine the kind of bold future that you want to go and create, and then go out there and do it. And the last thing I think, prioritizing you. I think as women, you tend to take on a lot. I know I've had a lot of conversations around work-life balance, and for me, I think it's just about finding balance in the moment. Take the time to prioritize your own health, your physical, mental, emotional health. Find the supports that you need, and see, how do you bring your best self to your own search. There's a lot of talk about purpose, right? Like finding your ikigai, and thinking about what you're passionate about, what the world needs right now, and think about how you want to build a financial future that marries both purpose and profit. And lastly, sort of designing your pathway. If you faced a layoff or you're dealing with survivor's guilt about being at a company, know that you are not only your job. There's a lot of other things that make you you. Take the time to develop your own identity, your interests, your strengths, both within your company as well as in the industry and in the world.
That's brilliant. And I think there's so many people talking about now how we should all just remember our own identity. Like you just said, we have so many diverse identities, hyphenated identities beyond just the job and designation. So, the way that we can move forward, given the difficult times so many people have gone through, really includes some of what you said, prioritizing our interests, passions, trying to create more mindfully. So as we wind down this interview, Manjula, what would your message be for your younger self? From what you've just said, we know you have some hacks and ways to stay productive but not burn out. And this would, of course, apply to anyone who's trying to navigate this difficult time or even transition careers.
Yeah, no, this was a fun question for me. I think, being driven by courage instead of fear is a big one. Don't ask for permission all the time, because I think, when I was younger, in the cultures that I grew up in, this idea of like, just do the work, put your head down, and people will help you along, and you will find your allies, don't get me wrong, but I think understanding how to be intentional about crafting your own path is something that is a learned skill. Learn to have difficult conversations with grace, because you will probably have a lot of them, and always put integrity and authenticity at the core of all of your interactions. Put people first, whether you're designing experiences for them or you're creating stories. Always start with empathy. Stories, systems, strategies, experiences, all of those are designed with people at the center. And that's the way you kind of change the world. It's also where you sort of create a more inspired, a more humane, ethical, sustainable world. And that's kind of been my journey as I've gone through a lot of different cultures and mediums and technologies. And then being able to find order in chaos. Hyphenated spaces are complicated, they're hard to navigate, but that's where you can actually connect the dots. You can construct meaning. You can find that combination of heart and logic. You can combine creativity with innovation. You can combine analog things with technologically advanced areas. And it's where you actually unite purpose and profit, both of them.
I love this. I don't know if you could see me and Preetha nodding along with every single thing you're saying. We have to organize a fireside chat at some point, Preetha. I think, Manjula, it's been incredible to chat with you. What we're trying to do at TapIn as we look at opportunities for upskilling for professional women in India and then emerging markets, we also really want to build out this kind of movement. There's so much to be said for solidarity, for allyship, for a sort of buddy system. And I think everything you've just said today reinforces that for us. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Absolutely love what you're building here, the community that you're creating, the support system for women leaders everywhere. I know you're starting in India, but I want to see this everywhere. Cheering you all on, and super excited to chat with you. I know we just talked 3 months ago, and you all have made such an incredible progress since then. Always rooting for you.
Thank you so much. An absolute pleasure.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.